Hello, hello, super expanders. I am so excited to be here and chatting with you and about to introduce you to really like an OG super expander. This guy is such an inspiration to so many people. His resilience, his grit are really, they're unparalleled. So I cannot wait for you to learn and hear all the things from Craig Siegel.
Thank you so much for having me. We're going to get nuts right now. I know we were speaking before we went on air. We probably could have talked forever, but just the name of the show, it resonates with me and why you wanted to create it. So I'm super excited. Let's get nuts.
So grateful to have you here. Okay, so we're just gonna like dive right into this. I'm gonna give a little context. So Craig and I know each other from a mastermind that we're in, and then of course we have like these a lot of parallel circles that we run in, and we're finally actually. This is really the first time that we're having like a real like person to person conversation, not just through social media and not through the context of our mastermind. So I'm just as excited to hear what he's going to share with us as you are. It's kind of like a first time real conversation for me. So what I'd love for you to share with me and with the audience is who you are behind all of the stuff, like behind the what you do, behind all of the business stuff, the what we show up in social media. Like who is Craig Siegel at his core?
Yeah, phenomenal question. And it's funny because one of the things I actually take pride in is everybody that I've gotten the opportunity to meet since I became friends with them on social media over the last year, they all say something similar, and they say something like this: that I'm the exact same person who shows up on social media as I do in person, and even the people most intimately and close to me will say the same thing. Like for me, like that's what leadership is. The camera's always on. I'm always this energetic and this weird and strange. Let me be transparent with you guys, but I wasn't always like this because essentially it took me 35 years to find myself. Now that I'm living inside my vision and doing what sets my soul on fire, I genuinely love this stuff. Like this isn't work to me. Having this great conversation with you, and like you attested to, it's one of the first times you and I are really getting to connect. I love this stuff. And who am I? What a deep and profound question, because a lot of people probably identify that as what they do for a living, right? And it's
Absolutely.
cool because one of my podcast guests a little while back, NFL Hall of Famer Brian Dawkins, he was saying something similar. He's like, football is what I did, but it's not who I am. So who am I? I'm someone that had the opportunity to reinvent themselves in this world and change his narrative and go from a life of being miserable and unfulfilled to completely reinventing, re-energizing, and redesigning my mindset, and now pouring back into the world and making a massive impact and help people understand that where they're at now is not an indication of where they're going to be. It's not a life sentence. And so I'm just someone that believes I'm here for a reason, and that mission is really, really big. And I just want to impact the world and help everybody tap into their own magic. And that's how I receive validation: is when someone listens to this podcast and this conversation, hopefully it resonated with them and it struck a chord.
I love that. I love that. So you mentioned you have a big vision, so and a big mission. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So look, if you're gonna think, you might as well think big. And I know that, yeah, I know you're smiling because we're cut from a similar cloth. Like you don't half-ass things. And it's one of the reasons why I respect you and why I wanted to have this conversation with you and support you and be on your show and so forth. And so, look, I felt very guided for quite a long time, but I wasn't able to put it all together. And it's funny, people always think that like Craig and CLS has been an overnight success, but what they don't realize is that I've been cultivating this version of Craig Siegel for 15 years. I just finally was able to repackage it and repurpose it and be intentional with it. My vision is pretty simple. It's just to continue to expand the reach and impact more and more and more and more people, so that long after I'm gone, hundreds of years from now, somebody can listen to this conversation on your podcast and feel some type of way, feel inspired, feel moved, feel like they want to go out and change their mindset or change their life and take action. So just want to continue to make the biggest impact possible and be a beacon of hope, faith, progress, and transformation for everybody.
I love that. So massive ripple effect with a lasting legacy. So inspiring, Craig. So tell me a little bit about you said that you were in a place where you were feeling kind of miserable. I'd love to hear about that because I feel that there are so many people experiencing that inside of careers, inside of relationships, and questioning whether it is that they have what it is inside of them in order to shift that narrative, to step into the vision and mission that they know is living inside of them.
Yeah, this is some pretty deep stuff. And for the audience listening, like, let us be clear right now. Like, everybody has gifts. Everybody is special and unique in their own right. It's challenging to be able to identify that and gain clarity on that, but never settle. And I know that from experience. I have empathy for everyone out there right now that's struggling to find themselves, to find happiness, whatever that might look like. I was on Wall Street for the last 11 years. By society's standard, I was successful because I was making money. But as I discovered, making money doesn't equal success. In my personal opinion, today, success is measured by how happy you are or how big of an impact you're making. That's just my personal opinion. And so, although it was fun and exciting on Wall Street until it wasn't, it became soul sucking. And ultimately, to say I was unfulfilled, Corey, was a massive understatement. Like, it felt like I was waking up every single day and going to a job, like a job. Like, on Mondays, I'd look forward to the weekends. And spoiler alert, that's not how life should be. It's not. I left finance a few years back and I started my own business, which was much less stressful, but ultimately just as unfulfilling. And so a couple of years back, I was looking for an outlet. I was looking to find myself. I got into running. I ran 4 marathons in 2019. That was cool and exciting. And I'm grateful that I found it. We just ran the New York City Marathon a couple months back, right after surgery, but I wasn't looking to become a professional runner. I was looking for something else. I felt guided. I just didn't know what it was. When the pandemic happened, I just had that very spiritual moment. I saw a lot of people, as I imagine you did, doing a lot of Netflix and a lot of day drinking. I said, that's not going to be me. And I just put myself in this frequency. And for the first time, really grounded myself, maybe ever. And just ask myself the tough questions. And from studying personal development for so long, I had a strategy similar to the one Walt Disney used to launch Disney. I just asked myself what my passions were and what my gifts were. And my gifts are my ability to communicate effectively and my passions, personal development. So I married those two and I started my CLS brand. And I'm super grateful because, as it turns out, I didn't start CLS for the money. But when you really find what sets your soul on fire and you do a really good job, the whole irony is the money follows you. Now I'm making more money than I ever made in my life. I'm completely out of Wall Street, but that's never what it was about. I genuinely love this stuff, and I'll be doing this in some capacity for the rest of my life. And we're just getting warmed up.
All right, so I want to ask you a couple things. So talking about money and money beliefs is definitely one of my jams. So I feel like some people listening might be thinking, well, Craig, it was so easy for you to shift from what you were doing into something else because you were making so much money. So do you? And what I want to ask really is, what sort of money beliefs did you have to get over in order to basically walk away from a steady income that was really good in order to reinvent yourself? Because there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of unknown when you leave essentially where someone else is making sure that your paycheck rolls in.
Yeah. So great questions. And for me, just because I was making a lot of money doesn't mean I was saving a lot of money. So let me be clear to the audience. When I decided to burn the ships and make it so there was no retreat and start CLS, I was out of Wall Street. I made that decision, but there was a 2-month gap when that was going on, when zero money was coming in, and it was tight for me. But ultimately, money for me was never an issue. What I wanted to do was find clarity and really understand how this whole online space works and how I can be effective in this arena. Because making money in a job or a business or on Wall Street is one thing, but this whole online space is a completely different animal, so to speak. And a little over a year ago, I had 300 Instagram followers. I had 0 connections, none of these celebrities and so forth. But I knew that the concept of CLS was very real and very effective, because one thing that I do not lack is self-belief. I believe self-belief is everything in this world. And if you believe in yourself and you trust yourself, then ultimately you'll figure out a way. And so for me, it wasn't so much about, can we make money doing this? I was more focused on, can we make a big impact? Can we reach a lot of people? Can we be of significance? And then based upon my money beliefs over the years, I was under the impression with myself that if we can do that, the money will follow us. And for the audience listening, I think that's key. I think a lot of people focus too much on how much money they can make, or if they want to launch a coaching program, like how much money does that look like? I think that's the wrong mindset. I think you do a really, really, really good job and provide a ton of value, and the money will have no choice but to follow you.
Yeah. So what I really heard is that you leaned into serving people. And when you serve people, it just is absolutely, the money flows from there. So I love that you said that you have so much self-belief, because I feel like that is like, it's almost like it's like the secret sauce, because if you don't have belief in yourself, no one else is going to believe you. You got to believe you first.
Right.
How can you ever enroll someone into your thought process or your vision if you don't believe it yourself?
Yeah, this is awesome. And I'm so,
Yeah.
and also I want to acknowledge you, what you said before, serving people, priority number one, providing value, the money will come. There's just no way it can't. That's how the universe works. So I definitely want to hammer that home to the audience. And yeah, I put out a quote, I think on New Year's, maybe the day before New Year's Eve, a little over a month ago. And I basically said this: the most important sale you'll ever make in your life is to sell yourself that you are worthy. And that's the truth. Once you believe that you're worthy and that you have a story to tell, that you could be of value and be of significance, then you'll make it work.
Yeah, people get so excited to be in the energy of someone who believes in themselves. So when you were on this quest for clarity, so I heard you talk about running, right? So that's a passion of yours. Is that really where you found it? And the reason I'm asking, because I'm really just thinking of my experience with running, and I'm not a marathon runner. Maybe one day I'll tackle that. But I do know that it's essentially a moving meditation, and that you just get into the cadence of the run. If you can get over that limit and cross over into sort of that endorphin stage of that runner's high, the thoughts, the downloads, the ideas, they just start flowing, and it's like you can't even stop them.
Yes. To be honest with you, I never heard somebody articulate it like that. A moving meditation that hits home. I love that. So true. That's where all big ideas come from. It's where I gather some of my best creative juices. It wasn't that led to CLS, but ultimately it was definitely a step in the right direction. Because for my mindset, what that taught me is that everything in life is mindset. Genuinely, like I don't run marathons with my physicality, and the proof is in concept. 2 months ago, I ran the New York City Marathon after there was a tumor in my foot and I had to get surgery, and I literally had no physical training. And I started entering the quantum and all that spiritual stuff, and I ended up running a 3:39 marathon, the fastest I've ran in my life. So I believe everything is mindset, and that was definitely a catalyst to even more self-belief, to say to myself, we're going to step into this online space and this CLS arena, and we'll make it work.
Oh my gosh, I love that. So then what was your process for finding the clarity that you needed in order to show up so big?
So in the beginning of the pandemic, when I put myself in that frequency, and I was like, I don't know exactly what this looks like, but I know this: I ain't going back. Like I've been down that road. I've lived that life, if you would even call it living. Let's get deep for a second. I don't even know if I was alive the last few years. I was just existing, going to a job every single day. And like, look, it's easy to say, find gratitude. Yes, I was grateful that I had my health, this, that, and the other thing. But at the end of the day, like, you still have to wake up the next day and do this all over again. So it's hard to be grateful about that. I was like stuck in the matrix going like this. And so once I realized, hold on a second, I have a choice, right? Like this world is my playground, so to speak. I could redesign my mindset. I could re-energize my passions, and I could reinvent myself. And then ultimately in the beginning of the pandemic, I just, from studying personal development and being obsessed with that stuff, that strategy that I spoke about earlier that Disney used, it was very effective for me. Just finding clarity on what I'm actually good at, and then also finding clarity on what I actually love. And as it turns out, the personal development stuff, it wasn't just a passion of mine all these years. It's actually my purpose. And I have an effective ability to communicate it. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's been so successful. So ultimately, I just found myself grounded, a lot of journaling, a lot of, as I like to say, sharpening the axe, But the idea came to me relatively quickly. I just needed some space to find myself grounded. And I didn't take that space. And I take ownership for that for the last 10 years.
Oh, so a couple of things stuck out to me. One is space, right? And so often I think we fill our lives, even when we're stuck in misery, you're going to a job day in and day out, you're in a relationship that you don't like. And we either numb out or we over like stack our schedules, thinking that somehow we'll find the answer. But truly, the answer is found in these like long periods of space. It's a lot like the time, the creative time that we have to allow for children to have. Like, it's a problem with kids today, right? They pack their schedules with too many things, too many activities, too many teams, too many things. And when we were, I'm a little older than you, but when I was a kid, they used to lock the door and just be like, get outside and don't come back for a while. And so there was these long spaces of what you like when we were kids, it was boredom. But as adults, your mind just kind of wanders into places and you start to find and discover things about yourself that you never really you never gave yourself the space though, just to be with yourself.
So true. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was one thing. And then the other thing that you said that really stood out to me is purpose. And I think that's a real tipping point for a lot of people, for is to find their actual purpose. And that's when you actually are definitive and sure and certain in your purpose, what is the way that you're showing up. That's what happens when we are living our purpose. You really can show up in the idea of being judged or criticized or failure or it not going the way that you think it should go. It's not even a thing anymore because you're driven by something so much bigger than yourself.
100%. Yeah. And when you have that like faith, whatever it is that you believe in, like a higher power, if it's God, Jesus, Hanukkah, Harry, Joe Schmo, whatever the case may be, like when you really believe you're doing something for a bigger reason than just you, is when all the real magic happens. And let me be vulnerable for a second. Like I learned a valuable lesson even a few months back when I was training for the Chicago Marathon and I was talking about it like on social media, like I'm going to PR, personal record, or shock the world or inspire. Next thing you know, I'm in a big speaking engagement and I get misdiagnosed with a sprained ligament. Turns out there's a tumor in my foot. But ultimately, this new version of Craig understands that life happens for us, not to us. So where is this propelling us? What is this going to teach us? We never really know at the time. We can only connect the dots looking backwards, as Steve Jobs likes to say. But ultimately, I had an opportunity to run New York City just a couple of weeks after Chicago and do it for my pops and inspire him, he's battling cancer, and also raise money for American Cancer Society. So now I was doing it not for Craig, for a much bigger cause. We got to that start line and we ran it. We ran hard and fast, even with a broken foot. I don't think that's a coincidence. So I learned a very valuable lesson in that little story arc right there. And that's working within the ego, right? There's a lot of talk about the ego. You don't shed the ego completely. You learn how to work within it. And I think when you're humble and you're doing things for the right reasons to make impact, be of significance, with purpose, with intention, that's really when the magic happens in this world and stuff like that. You'll make more money than you ever dreamed possible, but you have to do it for the right reasons. And look, we're still learning every single day, right? This is the journey. But ultimately, that's something I learned over the last year, and it makes a massive impact.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Growth and evolution over a lifetime. It's such a it when you look at it that way, it all of a sudden you can like settle into some peace because you start to realize that there's actually no top to the mountain. Like you keep hitting these summits and it's like, okay, take a breath, take in the beauty of where I've come, celebrate your achievement, and then it's continue on the climb to the next thing when you're fueled by purpose and your mission. I feel like it's just such a powerful catalyst. So your mission, your vision, your talents and gifts, they shine so bright. So along the way, there had to have been some super expanders for you, people who have really shown you there was proof that you could live out your mission and vision, that they inspired you, they called you up. I'd love to hear who they are. Tell me a super expander story.
Yeah. So in regards to super expanders, when you the way you describe that, I think of like mentors. And the cool part about mentors is you can have direct mentors that you literally work with, like when someone works with you, or you could have indirect mentors, like people maybe that you follow or listen to their podcasts on social media, whatever the case may be. So when I started CLS and I was looking to find myself in this space and find my authenticity and so forth, someone that I really gravitated towards was Ed Milet. He's one of the top people in the whole space right now, probably right there with Tony Robbins. And I just liked his style. It was relatable to me. And I appreciated his body of work. And he was an indirect mentor to me. And then I manifested him actually being on the podcast to end the year, which was pretty cool. Only 1 year in existence, the show. He doesn't do many interviews like that. Again, not a coincidence, talk about the power of intention and so forth. But he was somebody who really stuck out to me that I was just, I really gravitated towards. So that's an example of an indirect mentor. Someone that I actually approached is Dave Meltzer. He's someone that I met through this space and I formed a relationship with him, hopped on a plane, flew across the country to LA to shake his hand and to nourish that relationship. And for the audience listening, like that's a major nugget right there. Like work on your relationships. They're literally everything. You're always one relationship away from a completely different life, whatever the case may be. Don't take those for granted. And so I built that relationship with Dave, and now we have a weekly show on Instagram on Saturdays called The Paradigm Shift, which just got greenlit for Apple TV. We start filming in April. And he's just been a mentor to me because he has more experience than I do in this space. And for the audience listening, like, let me be honest. There were times when I wasn't really big into mentors because I thought I had all the answers. I thought I could figure it out myself. And the truth of the matter is that's just ignorance. Like, the world is a playground. There's no problem that hasn't happened yet. Like, people that have had experience or have done things before, like, you have to surround yourself with them, pick their brains, see what they did right, see what they did wrong, so you can minimize those mistakes and so forth. And so I can't stress enough the power of mentorship. It's one of the great things that you do so well. But ultimately, Dave was a direct mentor to me, and then Ed Milet being an indirect one.
You cannot quantum leap without someone helping collapse time for you. And that's really, really what mentors, that's what they do, right? It's like they show you the mistakes that they made and they're like, look, don't be like me. Do it this way.
That's it.
Yeah, I love that. So then that actually kind of makes me think. So relationships are such a big thing. And I feel like I could just go off on a whole tangent on all the crazinesses of like when we're on Instagram and people slide into your DMs without ever having the thought of like fostering a relationship. Like, hello. But so I would love if you'd be willing to share. I'm like, I digress, and this is probably not the appropriate time for this conversation. So we'll shelf that for another time. So if you could give some tips on how people can foster a relationship, especially when you're doing it as a starting point online, like if you're on a social media channel and that's how you're forging the beginning of this relationship, which I imagine for a lot of the people that you have, the big names you've had on your podcast, that's how the relationship, the conversation begins to open. So maybe you could share some like little juicy nuggets on and help some people that are listening.
Ultimately, when it comes down to relationships, you should have the mindset, in my opinion, of you want something for that person, not from them. And when you have that mentality, then it's you're providing value or you're of service. And there's something that you can do for them. And then ultimately it becomes a win-win. So I always want to go into each relationship on how can I support you, right? Like me and you haven't really had the opportunity to speak very much up until this point, and I have a feeling that's about to change. But just me coming on the show and supporting you, and obviously I'll share it and so forth. Now there's a friendship there, and everybody wins, and that's what it's all about. The common mistake that I see is exactly what you just said. Everybody wants to hit me up. Like, so many people hit me up now. It's funny because in the beginning, like the whole paradigm has shifted. When I was just starting out, little over a year ago, I didn't have any connections, but I was grinding. You know, I was busting my butt and I was working hard to form relationships. Some people that didn't want to help, now all they want to do is hit me up and say, can you introduce me to so-and-so? Can you introduce me to Ed Milet, to Rob Deerdeck, to Bethany Hamilton? But sometimes I'll be honest, and I never said this publicly, it just doesn't feel tasteful. It's like, not like, great work. Like, would you mind making an introduction? It's just, they go right in. And ultimately, to me, it's like they want something from me, not for me. And ultimately it turns me off a little bit, straight up.
Yeah, it is not an equal energy exchange, as they would say. And it doesn't feel good.
No.
So the relationship is important, of course. I mean, so how do you cultivate a relationship with these big names? I mean, I'm just out of, I mean, curiosity for myself, I'm asking, but I'm sure the audience would really love to know. How do you open up a conversation with someone that they probably have someone in their DMs managing them for them because they've got such a huge following? How do you get in their ear? Like, and especially when the I guess the someone is, how do you make it an equal energy exchange? So I'm tripping over my words there. If you're coming from a place where you're just getting started and you're like, how can I contribute to this like big person's life? And how can I make this an equal energy exchange? You have tips on that?
So number one, you want to be able to build rapport with somebody, right? So I think that's key in relationships or anything in life. And ultimately, people are going to work with you because they like you, not because of your product, right? So by building rapport, by being humble, by being respectful, but at the same time, you don't want to seem like a fan, right? Where like, they're all the way up on this pedestal, because that's a little corny too. So you want to be able to build a rapport and help them understand that whatever it is that you have to offer is also valuable to them, even if it's not 50-50. That's okay. Somebody will still be willing to take a chance and do something with you as long as they see a little bit of value there, or they really respect you and so forth. And so for me, one of the things that I bring to the table is, whether you like me or not, it's just something you can't deny, is the community. I worked really, really hard to build a community and pour into them and give back, provide value. And as you said earlier, before we went on air, like the CLS membership has 275 people in there now. So if I'm going to bring in a guest speaker, they know they're going to be speaking in front of a few hundred people. That's enticing to them, because then they're able to spread their message a little bit more than as if they were just going to someone that has, 5 downloads on a podcast. Now, I'm not saying that they shouldn't still do it, but they can't get to everyone. Let's just be honest. There's only a certain amount of time in the day. So you want to be able to provide some sort of value to them, even if it's not a 50-50. And then obviously understand how to build rapport. Be humble, but also respectful.
Yeah, you guys could see, and this is me with my NLP. We are in a deep rapport right now because we're both sitting with our leg up, and who even knew?
Hearing each other. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as you said that, I was like, it's so funny. We're in like deep rapport right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, rapport is such a big thing. Okay, so as a leader, I'd love to know what's your North Star? What is the feeling that you are going for every day when you wake up? Like, what is it that, not chasing, but like, what is it you are trying to embody every day?
Just being energized about what we're doing. And as long as I continue to stay enthusiastic and excited about all the different moving parts in CLS, I'm just super excited, grateful, and I'm just in this like completely different frequency than I've ever been in my life right now. And we're making a big impact. We're reaching a lot of people. There's so many exciting projects going on. There's never one day since I started CLS. And for entrepreneurs out there, like, listen up, grab a pen and a journal and listen. There should never be one day that you don't take at least a little step forward. That doesn't mean that there's not going to be setbacks and challenges and obstacles and stuff like that, but there's always something that you can do to move the needle, to spread awareness, or to build your brand, or to get one person into your community so they could see the great content that you have, whatever the case may be. And every single day, there's just so many exciting things going on and new projects. And ultimately, whereas back in the day, I would be validated by having a nice watch or a nice car, and I was very immature. That was a whole different lifetime ago. Now I'm validated by all the testimonials and by someone's coming up to me after I get off stage last weekend. Hey, like in tears, like what you said really resonated with me. Like, you helped me understand, like, I can become unstuck. I can reinvent myself. It's never too late, whatever the case may be. So just understanding that every time we show up, we're making an impact on people. And that's ultimately what it's all about.
Yeah, it's so true. And when we're guided by that, it's just pure magic. Mm.
And
So
when
I
we're ready,
know that you are such a busy guy. So I don't want to, suck up all your time because you have so many amazing people that you're working with and inspiring along the way. So I'd love to know if you were going to give yourself, your younger self, just like one little juicy nugget of advice or a bit of encouragement. This is like the super expander moment where you get to like help collapse time for other people. What would it be?
two things. Number one, acknowledge your authenticity and embrace that. I'm a strange cat. Like, let me be 100% transparent with you. I'm weird. And ultimately, the weirder and stranger I am when I show up, the more of a connection I'm able to form with the audience and the more they gravitate towards me. And I used to think by being weird, that was a negative, so to speak, and I should maybe hide that side of me. And now all my cards are on the table. Like, what you see is what you get. The strangeness, the weirdness, the craziness, the off the walls, all that stuff. That's what people love because that's what makes me me. And I also acknowledge that I'm not everyone's cup of tea. I'm definitely not everyone's glass of whiskey. It is what it is. But I can go to sleep at night and live with the fact that I am 100% authentically me. And I only know that now because I spent so much time being inauthentic and trying to be a people pleaser and not be myself. The second thing that I definitely want to land the plane with and hammer home is just the power of mentorship and surrounding yourself with good people that have done things that you would like to do, and just pick their brain and be around them, be around big thinkers and people that are doing big, exciting things, people that are putting a dent in the universe, people that think big, that change their paradigms and so forth. And look, like one day when I have kids, God willing, it's going to be very important to me to have mentorship and be guiding them at a very, very early age. I didn't start personal development until I graduated college when I was looking to find myself, and thank God I did. But they don't teach you that stuff in school. You don't learn how to learn in school. You have a curriculum, in my opinion, and you're either interested in it or you're not. For me, I never was. That's just my opinion. But ultimately, finding mentorship and understanding personal development, becoming self-aware, and realizing that where you're at right now, it's not a life sentence. You can change your mindset. You can dictate your inner experience, and you can create and reinvent an entirely new life for yourself.
Ah, so true and so inspiring. Okay, so let's let everyone know how they can find you. What's the best way for them, for the people to enter into your world?
I'd say I hang out the most on Instagram at Craig Siegel _CLS. Our website, cultivatelastingsymphony.com, has all the content, all the ways to work with us, whether it's the membership or the masterminds, the one-on-ones, all the things that we have going on, and obviously the speaking engagements and so forth. And of course, anywhere you listen to podcasts, the record setting, the CLS experience. And if you like daily inspiration, text me at 917-634-3796.
Okay, you guys can find all of that in the show notes as well for your ease. Thank you so much for being here today, for taking the time to chat with us, to inspire everyone, to show them that they're at any given time you can reinvent yourself. So grateful that you were here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. And I want to acknowledge you. I appreciate the questions. You challenged me today, and that's what it's all about. And I think this is great content for anyone listening. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, I'm blushing. I'll see you guys. I'll catch you guys on the next episode.